Welcome. My name is Ted Reinstein. I'm a reporter for the Chronicle show on WCVB, and the reason I'm here today, though, is that I am a huge fan, ally, and longtime user of rail trails. I live nearby, that helps. I live very nearby in Holliston, and where we have a rail trail, much like what you are opening here today, and in fact, here today, where's Robert? Wide Connect, there he is. So, yep, Robert went through years ago everything you've gone through a little more recently. And that is creating a rail trail, which I don't have to tell anybody here is not the easiest thing to do, but it is a great thing to do. And there are a few days better than a day when a new rail trail comes online, right? But it's not easy to do. It's not easy to do. And you don't have to go far to find out how hard it can be to do, even when it seems simple and even when it's not a big stretch of rail trail. Ask them in Dedham. Ask them right over here in Dover. Right? So this away. So, you know, but so what is it we love about rail trails? What is there not to love? The thing that I love most, and the reason why I've done so many stories on rail trails, both the ones that are great and exist and the ones that are trying to get off the ground, is the same reason I love and do so many stories on diners and general stores and public libraries. They are first and foremost great community amenities shared by entire communities that encourage communities to come together. They're third places, right? They're community gathering places. This is what makes them great. Accessible to everybody. They don't cost anything to use, right? There's nothing not to like. Unless you live, no. So, but they all come around. That's the good thing. I know a lot of you are familiar with Craig Della Penna, who is like the mentor, the grandfather of rail trails in Massachusetts, right? Wonderful mentor to so many rail trail projects. And I remember years ago talking with Craig out in Western Mass, and you know, he's got these great stats, but the ones that always resonate for me most are, wherever there's been a rail trail, there has been opposition. And wherever there is a rail trail today, there is no longer any opposition. Not only that, unfailingly, everywhere you find a rail trail, no matter what the level of opposition was originally, today, if it's in use, it is often considered the single greatest recreational amenity in that community that feels invested in by everybody, supported by everybody, and maintained by everybody. I had a wonderful cop who works the rail trail in the Assabet River Trail in Acton, right? So he's a bike cop. It's his job all summer to ride the rail trail. Tough job. No, great guy. But you know what he said? You know, we were talking about what kind of crime, what kind of vandalism do you see, you know, on a rail trail? And he said, almost none. And he said, you know why? Because I don't actually have to be here. I am, because as rail trails take root, communities take ownership. And now it becomes something that if you're going to spray paint some garbage on a rail trail, if you're going to try to dump a sofa on a rail trail, whoa, that's my rail trail. I use that. My kids use that. I walk my dog. I ski in the wind. So communities take over and invest in the rail trails. That will happen here. No matter what kind of opposition there has been, it happens everywhere. And as Craig will tell you, and I'm sure he told some of you, he's also a realtor. And as Craig will tell you, you know, 15, 20 years ago, if your house was next to a rail trail, that might be something that was either not mentioned in the real estate ad or that was in the fine print. Today, being next to a rail trail often leads the way in terms of what makes a house marketable. That says everything you need to know. But I don't have to tell any of this to any of you because you've already learned all this. You've done this. You've created a rail trail. My hat is off to you because I know that it is not easy to do. But I know everyone will come to love this rail trail. The truth is, I've often walked this section all the way through here up into the woods to the ball field many, many times over the years. And now it'll be this like officially named rail trail. So thank you. Thank you for bringing this trail online. And with that, I want to introduce some guests who are more important than me here today. So first off, is Shawn here? Shawn Dooley, represent. Please come up, because he's got something in his arm that's very official, unlike anything I brought with me, which is just a piece of paper.
Well, it's so nice to have this happen. One of my very first, when I first got elected in 2014, one of the very first pieces of legislation I started to work on was, and working with the MBTA and back then it was still CSX, of getting Farm Street able for the town to be able to fix that. Any of you who remember, you used to come down Farm Street, you would basically bottom out your car. To be honest with you, my daughter at one point in time, her senior year of high school, bottomed out her car and took off her exhaust, so I was very familiar with it. And so we were able to get that turned over to the town where they could pave it and actually fix that little thing. So I think that was one of the impetuses, one of the first parts of getting this involved. So it's so awesome that this is here. Working with Rentham and Norfolk on their rail trail as well. So hopefully eventually we'll get to get all of these connected and interconnected throughout the state, which would be phenomenal. I lived in Washington, D.C. for several years, and Virginia and Maryland and D.C. all have interconnected rail trails that go, you can get on them and go for 60, 70, 80 miles on a bike ride if you wanted to. So it's pretty neat, and it gives so much back to the community. Unfortunately, my partner in the House, Denise Garlick, wasn't able to be here today, but she is here in spirit, and same with Senator Paul Feeney, who also. So they've both asked me to send their very best wishes, and I will present citations from both the House and the Senate. Be it hereby known to all that the Massachusetts House of Representatives offers its sincerest congratulations to the Friends of the Medfield Rail Trail in recognition of the grand opening of the new 1.3-mile multi-use trail and repurposing of the Bay Colony Railroad line for public enjoyment. The entire membership extends its very best wishes and expresses the hope for future good fortune and continued success to all endeavors given this first day of October 2022. Ron Mariano, Speaker of the House, Denise Garlick, and Shawn Dooley, Medfield State Representatives. And be it hereby known that the Massachusetts Senate congratulates the Friends of the Medfield Rail Trail in recognition of the grand opening of the 1.3-mile multi-use rail trail and repurposing the Bay Line Railroad line for public enjoyment. I think they copied our citation. And be it hereby known that the Massachusetts Senate extends its best wishes for continued success, and this citation be duly signed by the President of the Senate and attested to copy, therefore transmitted to the Clerk of the Senate, Karen Spilka, Senate President, and Paul Feeney, your state senator. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shawn. Is Abby here? We've been talking. Of course you're there.
Thank you. It's okay. A little lower. I'm Abby Marble. I'm with the Medfield Foundation. Medfield Foundation has been the fiduciary sponsor for Friends of Medfield Rail Trail. And I really just want to say thank you to Christian, Mike Taylor, Paula. They did a phenomenal job. They really did they did the lion's share of the work. I just wrote checks and made sure everything balanced. Thank you very much to the town of Medfield, the government, and its residents for the support and energy that was needed to create such a beautiful rail trail. And again, just a thank you for all the donors and for everybody for coming.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Abby. Is Gus Murby here? Gus.
Two quick comments before I read the proclamation. First one, in thinking about what makes a town the difference between a good town and a great town, I've kind of come to the conclusion that it's the people in the town that do the extra things that make a difference, that what really helps the town that might be good, be great. I look back as an example years ago, the Pocket Park. I clearly look at this as something that would not have happened if it was entirely up to the town to initiate and taxes to fund and all that. And I'm thinking forward, the Hinckley Helpers Initiative for the playground at that pond. All are things that wouldn't have been here if somebody didn't really dig in and try to make it happen. And I took your point that after the fact, it becomes very clear to people how valuable it was. And Christian would probably look back to the very first time he presented this to me, where we had major objections around the liability that we were taking on. So as somebody who threw a legal barrier at the start, I have already enjoyed this since last winter, and I'm just delighted you put it so close to where I live, Christian. The other point I'd make is this is my second proclamation in less than a month. The Medfield High School class of '72 planted a linden tree out in front of the Blake schoolhouse school a couple of weeks ago. Apparently I passed the test because I have another proclamation to read, so let me get on with it. Honoring and recognizing the grand opening and ribbon cutting event for the Medfield Rail Trail. Whereas the nonprofit Bay Colony Rail Trail Association, along with Friends of the Medfield Rail Trail, a Medfield Foundation initiative, conceived and completed the project. Whereas thanks to considerable time and expertise by volunteers, the project has been funded entirely by grants from the state's Mass Trails program and private donations. Whereas the planning, building, and designing of the rail trail project was a successful private-public partnership. Whereas the Medfield Department of Public Works has been instrumental in the construction of the trail. Whereas the Medfield Rail Trail provides a flat, easy path for walking, running, horseback riding, and biking, parenthetically, and cross-country skiing. I can attest to that. For people of all ages in Medfield and nearby communities. Whereas the Medfield Rail Trail opens up safe links to hundreds of acres of town-owned recreation areas and the former Medfield State Hospital campus. Now, therefore, in recognition of the numerous volunteers and town of Medfield employees whose hard work and commitment to the community helped to make the Medfield Rail Trail a reality, the Medfield Board of Selectmen presents this certificate of appreciation. We are to affix the seal of the town of Medfield as of this first day of October 2022. Signed, Gus Murby, Chairman, Ursula L. Peterson, Clerk, and Eileen Murphy, third member.
Thank you, Gus, Chair of the Medfield Select Board. And I should have mentioned that I know a lot of you know Abby, but Abby is the Medfield Foundation. So I should have said that. Next up, perhaps the most important person to speak, Christian Donner, Friends of the Medfield Rail.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Ted. Thanks for coming here today. It's an honor to have you. So I started working on this project in 2009. So 13 years ago, a little over 13 years, and now they gave me 7 minutes to talk about it. So I'll try to give you a brief summary of what happened in the past 13 years, and also try to thank all the people who were materially involved in this. So 13 years ago, a gentleman from Needham, Tad Staley, who's over there, and I, and a third person who we lost along the way, got in touch with each other, and we said, there's this inactive railroad corridor, why don't we do something with it? Why don't we try to put, both a recreational trail and an alternative commuting corridor in place so that people who live in Medfield and work in Needham or beyond can get to the rail trail, can get to the commuter rail on their bicycles. And so this was the initial idea of the project, and I'm already getting sidetracked here and off my script. So that was the start. And as some of you know, it took Newton, who's also part of the project, because there's a stretch of the same corridor that's north of Needham that is not contiguous, but it is the same railroad line. Newton opened first in 2015, I think, about a mile. In 2016, Needham opened their 1.7-mile trail, and it ends at the Dover side of the Charles River. There's the old Crescent Bridge, the fence there. And then, the attention switched to Dover, and it looked for a while like Dover was going to come along quickly, but it fell apart, unfortunately. And, we don't want to get into the details, but so Medfield started to become the focus of the project, and we got it done. And so over the past 4 or 5 years, there was a lot of fundraising to find the money, and some people were instrumental in doing that. Mostly James Goldstein from Needham, who's also here, and we have to thank him. Can't thank him enough for all the work that he did. And so there were some obstacles that we had to overcome. The fierce opposition of the warrant committee, but nonetheless, in 2018, the town voted to sign a lease with the MBTA, and we did. And so here we are, and the rest is history. Let me get to the list. So I want to thank a bunch of people who made this possible, and we'll start with the sponsors of today's event. There is Fitness Together, who has a booth over there. Blue Moon Bagel Cafe, who donated a whole bunch of cookies. Roach Brothers, the same. Needham Bank, who were also instrumental. I don't know if we have a representative of Needham Bank here, but Needham Bank was instrumental early on and for the work in Needham, and also for the work here in Medfield. Shaw's and Republic Barbecue. Then I would like to thank the town officials who we worked with over the past years, and who were always supportive. Even there were some conversations that we had, Gus, but in the end, they were all good conversations. So I want to thank Nick Milano specifically, who's no longer here, but who was assistant town administrator and who did a lot of legwork for us with the accounting and bookkeeping and keeping track of things and contractors and so on. Then Christine Tierwell, town administrator, Sarah Raposa, Sarah here, the planning town planner, not here, and Michelle Garrett, police chief, who is also not. Then Mass Trails, I want to thank for the 2 grants that we got, $200,000. Without that, clearly that was the bulk of the big part, the big piece. Without that, we would not have been able to do it. MFI, Medfield Foundation, the outgoing or former president, Evan Weisenfeld, who was very supportive and who got us on board with the MFI, and Abby, of course, who had to do a lot of paperwork to keep track of the monies and make sure that it all ends up in the right place. And then the new president, Kirsten Kohler, who I've spoken to many times. She did not make it, but anyways, moving on. There's the DPW, specifically Mogule, the director, and Bobby Kennedy, the highway department. So the reason why this was so important that we got their support was because the budgeting fell apart at some point along the way when we started to contract out the rail and tie removal. That ended up costing almost 3 times as much as we had planned, and so we had to find the money somewhere else, and we got that through the donation of the gravel that you see here, the recycled asphalt underneath that the town provided, and that saved us a chunk of money elsewhere. So in the end, there were a bunch of things like that had to come together to make it work. Thank you, DPW. We had David Zappo, the company who made that bid, Zappo Construction, to remove the rails and ties. There, and Mr. Zappo is a resident of Medfield. Without them coming in at about half the bid of the next lowest bid, clearly we could not have afforded it. We have my former and current colleagues on the Bay Colony Railroad Association and Friends of the Medfield Rail Trail, Paula and Michael and James there's some other faces here. I don't want to. Well, I'm running out of time, I guess. But we have some saying thanks to the abutters that worked with us, and I want to call out Teresa James, who lives right over there. They were always supportive from day one. The almost, and I counted it yesterday, almost 200 people have donated towards the cause over the years. And then Jay Hodge, who is almost a butter or a neighbor, he lives on School Street up here. But when we had the barn party cookout a few years ago, he grilled a fabulous the brisket, yes, the brisket. Thank you, fabulous brisket. And personally, I want to thank a few people who were always here when I called and said, hey, I need some help going out and cutting some bushes or whatever it was, no matter how hard it was, and how bad the mosquitoes were. And those people are Dick Judge and thank you, Dick. He complained, but he was there. And Graham Plonsky, who, between the two of them, I don't think Graham made it today, but we've had a lot of fun, but also worked really, really hard in the early days with just cutting back the bushes and shrubs. And so, I'm out of time, I think, but there's one more thing, and that is what I want to thank my wife, Pam. There was two more things. Thank you, Paula. And the musicians. And I have a list here, but if you want to, Andy, if you want to read their names, well, I can do it, but if I get the pronunciation right, but I'll try. So thank you. We have Susie Rudick. Actually, let me find my glasses.
There we go.
This is Tyler and Ben and Patrick and Alex.
Thank you. Yeah. Everybody over here. Everybody over here. No. We want to pick yeah. All right. Watch your fingers. Okay. Ready?